Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all the support I received from you. And as always, all the information in my videos is rumors taken from the internet or the street. I'm not saying the information is fact. The story of No Limit Faro, DrenchGang. This is the story of No Limit Faro from DrenchGang. To me, this is one of the most interesting stories in Chicago. Faro is without a doubt one of NLMB's most outstanding members. He put in massive work in a very short time period and at a very young age. I was the first blogger to discover his name and work in early 2021 once the war exploded between Pocket Town and NLMB. That is why this story is so interesting to me. I have followed his footsteps for a long time, and if I am to be completely honest, Faro is the wildest and grimiest member I have ever seen and followed when it comes to the Chicago drill scene. What's crazy about this story is that Faro is most likely the youngest member I have ever done a video on, born 2004 and is only 18 years of age. Despite his young age, Faro allegedly have over 5 bodies and a dozen of attempted murders under his belt. He has a lot of enemies all over the city and multiple sets are desperate to catch him. I hope you enjoy this story. This is the story of No Limit Faro, also known as Fari Go Get M, or the MVP. Faro grew up in the territory controlled by Muskegon Boys, MBG, which stands for Muskegon Block Gangsters, also known as Muskegon Boys, houses on 78th and Muskegon Avenue right off Exchange. They originated from the low buildings and the set itself was founded by Dosky and White Bread. Just like his father, Faro also claimed money mafia. However, this was when he was 13 to 14 years of age, and I think he mostly did it to honor his father, who was killed in 2011, when Faro was only 7 years old. Back then there were many members from No Limit who claimed money mafia, Simo for example, who were killed by shooter shells from Black Mob in June 2013. Strodala is another example who claimed both No Limit and money mafia. He was killed in August 2021 and was the cousin of Faro. The truth is that before Muskegon Boys merged with No Limit, money mafia was part of No Limit. At the time, they went by the acronym NLMM, No Limit Money Mafia. However, despite Faro growing up in Muskegon Boys territory, he was originally No Limit, just like his dad, Boss Blizz, who claimed both No Limit and money mafia. However, the majority of Faro's family grew up in that MB territory, and his mother's side is nearly entirely Muskegon Boys. Just as I mentioned in the introduction, Faro is incredibly young. He was born on January 11th, 2004, which makes him only 18 years of age by the time of this release. One thing you should be clear about is that Faro is part of one of the most respected and biggest families on the east side, where the majority claim Muskegon Boys and No Limit. He has several infamous cousins such as G Fazo, Fab and G Faro, all from Muskegon Boys. Already as a child, Faro lost loved ones. In April 2010, he lost one of the cousins he looked up to the most, G Fazo, who was killed by his own uncle, Jigs, during a dice game. The game went south. Fazo started to beat up his uncle, who decided to pull out a gun and shoot Fazo. Jigs was one of the relatives who actually did not claim No Limit. He was from Lakeside and has not been seen since the murder. Many believe he has moved to another state and started a new life. This is the reason why No Limit Cairo and other members have stated that Fazo wasn't killed by rivals, which is somewhat true since Jigs didn't kill Fazo in the name of Lakeside or because he was a rival. Faro is the firstborn in his family. He has a younger brother who to my knowledge is not involved in the gang life and stays in school. His mother is sister to Murda, Demetrius and Pookie from Muskegon Boys, 3 heavy original members. Faro has also called G-Rel from NLMB his uncle, since G-Rel, also known as Rugati, is the older brother of Jock from NLMB. G-Rel is one of the leaders within No Limit and Faro is very close with him. Faro have a lot of cousins. I already mentioned the Robinson brothers, G Fazo, Fab and G Faro. But he is also cousins with J Ski, and his brother Rello, and also Lil Mark, Lil Trey Young, Lil Mansky, Lil Ro and Twino, all outstanding members from NLMB and DrenchGang, especially the last two names. He is also cousins with Ace from NLMB, who was shot and killed in 2018. Faro is a prime example of someone who grew up in gang life and became a product of his environment. All of his cousins, uncles, and father were, or still are, in that life. He grew up together with the twin cousins, Twino and Lil Ro from DrenchGang. All three looked up to the older outstanding members such as Mally, Mad Max, Mineski, and especially their older cousin, Wet M Up, from whom they learned a lot. Faro, Lil Ro and Twino are known as the Big Three from NLMB, which refers to all the work they have put in on the street. They all got bodies and attempted murders to their names. The twin brothers were born in 2005. Sadly, Lil Ro lost his twin brother, Twino grinding, in a car crash in early June 2022. His death was heartbreaking for both Lil Ro and Faro. All three grew up together since toddlers and put in massive work in the streets together. Once they got older, you couldn't see Lil Ro without Twino. The Big Three always hung around their older cousins. It's no wonder the outcome of their lives. If you grew up in that environment, it's hard to know any other life. They also went to school together, the Bradwell School of Excellence, which is an elementary school located on the South Shore in No Limit territory. Faro got into a lot of trouble in that school. In June 2016, he got suspended for the rest of the year for fighting a security guard. However, Faro had pretty good grades and also used to play basketball and football in 8th grade. Faro started in junior high school in 2018. Faro's three older cousins, Jock, Jayski and Mansky, all came up under one of No Limit's top leader G. Gill, who was a shooter and is currently serving a long sentence in federal prison for narcotics and several shootings. Also Herbo, Max, Mally and Mineski came up under G. Gill, while members such as Lil Bibby, G. Money, White Sean and G. Nusky came up under the leader G. Bull, who controlled 78th while G. Gill controlled 79th. Even though everyone came from the same gang, and even though the leaders were cool with each other, there were clear differences about how both leaders guided the young up-and-coming members. G. Bull was all about the money, which has left a mark on his apprentices. Lil Bibby and G. Money are today the founders of the music record label Grade A Productions, who have brought up stars such as Juice WRLD and the Kid Laroi. Both Bibby and G. Money are millionaires. White Sean, the third brother, is also doing well and focuses on his family and money. G. Gill, however, who brought up members such as Mally, Cairo and Mad Max, he was a shooter and was named by the FBI as the General of No Limit. In 2012, G. Gill was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for selling narcotics and illegal firearms. G. Gill also admitted to the FBI that he had been shooting at other people on 5 to 10 different occasions, and believed that he hit the people he was aiming at in roughly half of these shootings. According to court documents, Gill admitted that he first joined the Black P Stone Nation while he was in grade school. He was subsequently convicted of aggravated battery with a firearm and aggravated discharge of a firearm, which arose from a drive-by shooting that killed one victim and wounded 4 others. He was later convicted of aggravated battery of a Chicago police officer. In an Instagram post made by Mad Max in 2016, he uploaded a picture of G. Gill and stated that Gill taught him everything and showed him the ropes. A No Limit affiliate in the comments agreed and said, "He definitely had you under his wings," followed by a demon emoji. Two other leaders from No Limit were white folks, also known as the Last Don. He passed away in 2011 due to injuries after being shot in 2006, allegedly by Lakeside. White Folks was uncle to Mad Max, Mineski and Cairo. However, members usually throw around the word uncle quite often. But relative or not, they were very close. Another leader was Big Wet, father of Lil Wet, or Wet M Up, who recently beat 4 counts of first-degree murder which took place one day after his father was killed by Shoota Shells and Trap Mo from Black Mob. Big Wet was an outstanding member with bodies under his belt. He had 4 dozen arrests during his lifetime, including first-degree murder on 2 different occasions. Wet M Up is no different than his dad. He is arguably the most outstanding member of No Limit. DrenchGang even stems from his name, Wet M Up. However, I don't believe he actually killed the 4 men in the restaurant. The police would never have released him if he did. This was a high-profile case and there is no way on earth he would beat the case if he was guilty. The reason they released him is due to a strong alibi, so it's very hard for me to believe that he did it. Lil Don from Pocket Town even rapped about it in a song, which is now deleted due to his current case, where he said that Lil Wet should stop bragging about the 4 bodies since he didn't do it. However, guilty or not, Lil Wet have allegedly been involved in other murders, and once he was arrested by the police for the quadruple homicide, the police stated that Wet was already known by the police and was not a stranger to using firearms. Today almost every leader of the past is dead, except G. Gill, who is still locked up. Jeeble, White Folks, Big Wet are all gone, and today, No Limit is run by Hellrail, also known as Rugatti, from NLMB. However, Rugatti has unofficially been a leader and a big member for No Limit for a long time. He was the one who started the decade-long war with Black Mob back in 2009 when he told Vito to slide on Black Mob. Vito slid and shot at Boo from Black Mob, who was with his kids. Days later, Vito was shot and killed by Boo, who was later convicted of the murder and sentenced to 60 years in prison. This gave birth to an incredibly bloody war between Black Mob and No Limit, which has even been investigated by the FBI after Black Mob's top member and rapper, Shoota Shells, was brutally killed by No Limit's top killer, Mad Max, along with 2 unknown members. Shoota Shells was first shot several times. Once he fell to the ground, Mad Max and the 2 others stood over him and took turns shooting him in the head. He was hit by over 30 bullets, with 15 to 18 of them striking him in the head. The autopsy report stated the wounds were too many to document. This murder sparked the investigation by the FBI, which basically led nowhere since nobody has been arrested. G-Slim was another heavy member and leader from No Limit who was shot and killed in July 2017 by Killa Spook from Pocket Town. G-Slim was allegedly one of the founders of No Limit, which has been around for over 30 years. G-Slim was the uncle of both Melly and Wu from 051 Young Money. He was also very close to Kurt Mack from Dro City and had connections to Boosie Badass. In June 2017, Melly was involved in the murder of Lord, also known as Dre, from Pocket Town / Quiet Money. They were actually friends, but according to Lord's mother, Melly backdoored her son for money to bail out his little brother, Wu, who was in jail at the time. Melly actually got arrested and charged for this murder but was released due to lack of evidence. The reason why I tell you this is because according to what I have heard from very initiated sources, Melly was not the killer, but it was G-Slim who killed Lord. However, with the help of Melly giving out the location and whatnot. Lord was an old head from Pocket Town with strong ties to King Rico and Lil Lay. It makes sense that G-Slim would want him gone and probably paid Melly to set it up. Another interesting detail is that G-Slim used to date Lord's mother back in the days. Just 1 month after murdering Lord, G Slim was murdered, allegedly by Kill a Spook from Pocket Town. G Slim was a real leader. He was shot in the middle of trying to get Moody from No Limit out of the way. Moody was shot in the face but luckily survived. G Slim, who was shot in the neck and right hand, was sadly pronounced dead at the hospital. From what I've heard, Kill a Spook made a big bag of this hit. G Slim had huge respect from No Limit, but not only No Limit but on the whole east side and south side. And Drilla from 051 even paid homage to him once he died. It is rumored that G Slim had multiple bodies under his belt, from back in early 2000 to just a month before his death. Just to be clear, G Slim was a 40-year-old man in 2017, still sliding and scoring on the enemy, so you can probably imagine the respect it brought. You can say whatever you want about these leaders teaching young members the ropes of the street, guiding them how to sell drugs and do drills. But one thing the leaders of No Limit did well was that they took care of the young members for real. What I mean by that is that the younger members weren't their store runners. If the leaders told the young members to do dirt, they did it with them. This is pretty much how it works in these gangs. The young members won't let anyone tell them what to do if they don't do it with them. It's the young members that's dangerous. They're the ones doing the killings. G Slim really stood out in that matter. He was doing drills by the age of 40 when he didn't really need to, since he had already done his dirt years back. Lil Bibby said it very well in the song, "You Ain't Gang," where he rapped, "F these old dudes, they can't tell me about no street shit. Love the ones you starve with, them the ones you eat with." This is the reason why G Slim had so much respect. He never left the gang. He always hung around the young members such as Mally, Mad Max, Mineski, G Herbo and Lil Bibby. G Slim was probably the biggest loss No Limit ever took, together with Mad Max. The reason I tell you all this is partly for you to understand the history of No Limit, which is basically a huge family, but also to make you understand the circumstances under which Faro grew up. Just as when Up, Max, Mally, Merch Money and Cairo learned from the elders, it was now their turn to pass on the knowledge down to the new generation. Faro, Lil Loss, Lil Ro, Twino, Emo, Muwop, Lil Hot and many others. Better believe No Limits the top members showed them the ropes of the street, how to do a drill and get away with it, best way to move without getting caught by the enemies, and how to make money, just like the elders taught them when they were younger. The older generation, Cairo and the others, is very close with the young generation. They can't just tell them to go shoot at people without them being there with them. Merch Money, Cairo and Mally have all done dirt with the younger members because that's how it worked back when they were younger, and that's how it works now when they are the elder and more experienced. Now that Faro and other youngins have come of age, most of them are at least 18, the age difference may not seem so much. I mean, Cairo is 26 years old today. However, those 7 years, or even 3 to 4 years, make a huge difference in the street. Cairo and his generation were active already in 2011, which means they have been in the game for over a decade. Faro was literally a kid back then, when Pt1 got killed, allegedly by Mally, Mad Max and Choppa. Faro was only 11 years of age. Rappers like G Herbo and Lil Bibby all knew Faro and the twins when they were kids. There are pictures of both Lil Bibby and G Herbo as grown adults taking pictures with Faro and Lil Trey Young. That's why I'm saying that No Limit is one big family. There is no people that just moves in and becomes a member. Nearly all members are deeply rooted in families who have resided in Terror Town for decades. It's very surreal to look at pictures of Faro or Lil Trey Young as children with Lil Bibby and G Herbo. Now one of them are gone due to gang violence, and the other putting in major work in the street. It's a never-ending circle. An event that affected Faro incredibly much was his father's death in 2011. His father, who was called Boss Blizz, or Lil Black, or Bay Bay, was a member of NLMM, No Limit Money Mafia, as I told you about earlier. He was a big money maker and role model for the younger in the hood. On June 3, 2011, when Joffrey was only 7 years old, Boss Blizz was tragically murdered in the 6800 block of South Crandon Avenue, which is territory of BON4, which is close to sets such as Paxtown and No Limit's allies, ABK. Boss Blizz was shot 14 times all over the body, and according to witnesses, they heard an argument, then saw a silver car flee northbound from the area at the time of the shooting. Blizz, whose real name was Randall Cummins, was found dead on the scene. The alleged killer behind this murder is Rio G from Pocket Town, who is the younger brother of the leaders of Pocket Town, King Rico and Lil Lay, who both serving jail time at the moment. King Rico for murdering Damien from Sircon City, who allegedly killed together with Cello, Bodie and Corey from Pocket Town. Rico was sentenced to 55 years in prison for the murder, while the others got released due to lack of evidence. However, Cello and Bodie was later charged with another murder, Booby Stone from Sircon City, after getting snitched on by Michi from Sircon City. Lil Lay on the other hand is currently serving 24 years in prison for a shooting. He will be released in 2030. Rio G also had a sister, Lady Shaw, who was shot and killed in May 2008, allegedly by Sircon City gangsters. Lil Lay is known throughout Chicago, mostly for creating Jarrow City by killing Jarvis in 2005, but also being a rapper. He is also known for wearing an eye patch due to him getting shot in the eye in 2006 by either Mo or Juicy from Outlaw City. Ryo-ji was only 16 years of age when he killed Boss Blizz, and this was his first body to my knowledge. Lil Lei, Ryo's older brother, taught him the ropes of the streets and everything that comes with it. He even used to lend his car to Ryo-ji to go do hits and whatnot. Why Ryo actually killed Boss Blizz is unknown. I don't think it was random, it were certainly motives behind it. Boss Blizz being close with Sircon City could be one of them. Like I said, this was Ryo's first body but far from his last. In August 2019 he allegedly killed Magic from NLMB together with KT Stray. KT Stray was even arrested for it but released due to lack of evidence. It's also rumored that he killed Lil Cine from Sircon City in June 2020, only a month before he himself was killed. However, there are also rumors that it was Sircon City themselves that did it. The whole Sircon is divided into two different groups at the moment, the ones who was close with Lil Cine, Sin City, and on the other side 1400 who was on TJ's side, the member who was allegedly behind the murder. What's known as that TJ backdoored Lil Cine, however if he pulled the trigger or if he gave away the location to Ryo-ji is unknown. Guns have been took back and forth due to this conflict, multiple shootings, and Lil Fred was recently shot. Anyway, back to Ryo-ji. It is rumored that he has been involved in other shootings and murders. He was a well-respected member who claimed both KTS and Pocket Town. However, the murder of Boss Blizz would turn out to be a big mistake because 9 years later he would be killed because of it, allegedly by Faro who by the time was 9 years older and was out for revenge. However, we will get to that later in the story. As I mentioned earlier, Faro was only 7 years old when his father was brutally killed. You could probably not imagine how tough the loss of his father was for him, especially at the age of 7. He was old enough to never forget, and to understand that he will never see his father again, but young enough not to understand how to handle it. Faro had now lost his father figure before he could even turn 10, a time in life where it's crucial to have a manly role model in your life, especially for a young boy growing up in that type of environment. Faro would often upload pictures of his father on Facebook. He would also upload the symbol for Money Mafia to honor him. There were two things that really hit me when I researched about this. Firstly, a music video I found which was a song by a relative of Boss Blizz. The song was a tribute to Blizz and was uploaded only days after his death, and in the comment section I found a comment by Faro saying, "Randall was my dad." I just found that incredibly sad. The second thing was a Facebook post by Faro in 2019, where he uploaded a picture of his dad and himself with the text, "Happy birthday Dad, I miss you so damn much. Ever since you passed, that innocent boy in the picture ain't innocent no more." Faro used Facebook already in 2011 to 2012, so you can literally see his life evolving through the pictures. In 2014 to 2015, already at the age of 10 to 11, Faro started uploading pictures doing gang signs with other children of his age such as Twino and Lil Ro. He also started claiming NLMB and even uploaded a picture with a pistol, only at the age of 10. However, the pistol looked like a pellet or BB gun, but still. Faro had now lost two male role models in a short time. First his cousin, G Fazo, and now his father, Boss Blizz. As he grew older, friends started to get killed and Faro would get deeper involved in the street. Despite Faro's young age, he socialized a lot with older members. However, many believe that Faro is from the same age group as Lil Gage, Dolph, Reese Money, or Daro, but that's not the truth. In 2016, when Faro was only 12 years old, he lost two very close friends who were much older than him, Daro from Muskegon Boys and Lil Gage from NLMB. Both were 3 years older than Faro and were from the same generation as Dolph and Solo. Daro was killed in May 2016 while walking in Englewood near Toonsheville. Quizzy from WNB was arrested for the murder but was released without charges. He was killed because they thought he was a gang member. Daro, who was only 15 years old, was very close with Emo from Muskegon Boys / Roblox, who is one of their most outstanding members with over 5 bodies and 20 attempts on his resume, at least according to himself. Daro Gang was created in his honor and members such as Faro, Lil Los and Faro were very close to him. Only 2 months later, Faro lost yet another friend, as I previously mentioned, Lil Gage, who was also only 15 years old when he was shot and killed. Lil Gage was together with Munchie from NLMB. When a red minivan pulled up, someone inside started shooting at the two. Lil Gage was hit in the head and Munchie was hit in the leg. Witnesses stated that Munchie, who was only 16 at the time, limped from the scene and screamed, "They shot my brother." Lil Gage was tragically pronounced dead at the scene. Munchie was rushed to the hospital and fortunately survived. Witnesses to the shooting stated that the getaway vehicle stopped at a red light at an intersection near the crime scene. The reason they did this was most likely to avoid the traffic cameras. Once the light turned green, the vehicle made a left turn. What I have heard from sources is that Gage and Munchie were out to hit a lick, which means to rob someone with a lot of money. They did this because 3 days later, it was Lil Gage's 16th birthday. However, it all went wrong and Lil Space from THF46 ended up killing him. There is a lot of hush-hush when it comes to this murder. Nobody from No Limit dare speaking on it or what happened except honoring his memory and name. The reason why there has been so much hush-hush about this murder is precisely because it was a member from THF who was behind the murder. Cairo from No Limit is originally from the low end and is the cousin of several THF members such as Shorty Rome, Lil Derek, Gino and Lil T. Lil Derek is even close with Lil Ro from DrenchGang. My guess is that they have solved this problem behind closed doors due to the family relations and have come to the conclusion that both Gage and the Lil Space were in the wrong. Why Lil Space from THF46 allegedly killed him is unknown, unless he was the lick they planned to hit. There are also people who believe that Munchie set him up, but that is unconfirmed. However, Munchie hasn't been around No Limit since it happened. Even for No Limit members, there are many pieces of the puzzle that are missing.
I'm Willie Richardson. I do my dear grandma. Just ask my homie. Bro, get y'all fully size on DJ. I got way more than that. Get y'all lame ass on Daro attempts. I got way more than 20. Get y'all snitch ass on. Y'all just want me to say some shit. Get y'all lame ass on. I want to be hanging around for them. Give me so much respect that they know what I do. I made a lot of niggas hurt. Daro. I made one of their main people. Blew him, main person. My grandma grade. They main homies hurt because of me. I fucking play him. I ain't bringing her. Get your goofy ass on. DJ, I got way more than that, bro. I'm finna block you off my leg, yo. Police shit. I don't even supposed to be talking about that shit, bro. Watch out with all that lame ass shit, bro. On DJ, I got way more than that. Watch out. DJ, I've been doing this shit since I was 16. I'm well, every hood got the best for me. Death Row, Pocket Tap.
In addition to Daro and Lil Gage, Faro also lost another friend, Lil Aaron from No Limit, who was shot and killed in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He was killed by a teenager named Robert, also known as Nero, who was only 14 years old at the time. He was sentenced to 5 years probation and got a clean record as an adult. Nero was from mob who had beef with DMB, which Aaron also claimed. This generation, with Lil Gage, Reese Money, Dolph, J-Dog, Kilo, Lil Hot, Scooter and Choppa, put in a lot of work in the years between 2015 to 2019. However, that whole group is basically gone today. Choppa, Reese Money and J-Dog are all three locked up on murder charges awaiting trial. Kilo is locked up for a robbery and attempted murder of an retired police officer. Scooter, Dolph, and Solo are all dead. Lil Hot is currently locked up for a shooting which Faro also was involved in, but for some reason he was released, most likely due to his young age and non-existent criminal record. Lil Hot on the other hand is older, 23, and has faced gun charges in 2017. We will get more into this situation later in the story. Choppa, who in 2015 allegedly was involved in the killing of Pt1, was recently sentenced to 60 years in prison for killing a store clerk who refused to share his blood. The shooting, which was captured on video by security cameras, occurred on April 6, 2017, outside the store where Arsenio Allen, 28, worked in the 2300 block of East 83rd Street. According to prosecutors, Choppa asked Allen if he could share the blunt he was smoking. When Allen refused, the prosecutor accused Choppa of stepping forward, then turning around and opening fire, striking Allen in the head. As I said, Choppa was from the same generation as Dolph and the others. He was also very close with Lil Gage, Mally and Mad Max. The two latter allegedly accompanied him on the KTS1 hit. Reese Money is currently charged with the murder of PT from the low end, and attempted murder of another person in the same situation, which occurred in July 2020 in Black Mob territory. Reese Money is very close with DrenchGang members such as Faro and Velo. Faro and Velo are, by the way, each other's right-hand man and were very close with G-Red from No Limit, who was killed in 2018. "2016 was a very tough year for NLMB. I have already told you about the death of both Daro and Lil Gage. In addition, No Limit lost 3 more members before the end of the year: Solo, G Mills and Lil Savage. First up was Lil Savage from NLMB, who was shot and killed just 2 months after Lil Gage. Savage, only 17 years old, was standing outside in Ridgeland Boys territory when 2 males walked up to him and shot him in the back. He was later pronounced dead at the hospital. A tragic detail is that Lil Savage's brother, Midnight from DFG, had been shot and killed just 2 months earlier, allegedly by Savage Dog from PBG in an accident while they were sliding on the 4 Southwest. The set allegedly behind the murder of Lil Savage were MTG079, who are allied with RGB since they both claim Drama World. RBG, also known as Ridgeland Boys Gangsters, allegedly gave away Lil Savage's location to MTG, who carried out the murder. However, I have been told that No Limit views RGB and MTG as basically the same set, which could mean it was either one who got him. There are rumors that NLMB retaliated just days later by killing WAP from MTG. According to these rumors, No Limit, Wet 'Em Up and Merch Money were behind this murder, but to be completely honest, I find this very hard to believe. WAP's body was found burned and with gunshot wounds to his body in the Bobian Woods Forest Preserve in the 13,200 block of South Doty Avenue, which is approximately a 20-minute drive away from No Limit's hood. The rumor may be true, but I find it very hard to believe that NLMB members shot a man, dumped him and set him on fire. It could be true, but I take this rumor with a big pinch of salt. Three months later, in December 2016, No Limit lost two more members, Solo and G Mills. On December 22nd, Solo, 21, was standing on a sidewalk in No Limit territory together with a 20-year-old man. A white SUV drove down the street and someone inside opened up the rear door and started shooting. Solo was tragically shot in the head and was pronounced dead at the hospital. The younger man was shot in his right foot and was listed in good condition. Solo was a big trapper from No Limit who made a lot of money, and the ones responsible for his death were allegedly MTG-079 in retaliation for Lil C and Joe Blow from MTG, who were both killed on Jan 6, 2015, allegedly by Mad Max and Mally. Just 3 days later, on Christmas, G Mills was shot and killed in No Limit territory. Mills, who was 25 years old and from the older generation of No Limit, was shot multiple times in the head, back and leg, and was tragically pronounced dead at the hospital minutes later. Mills was a rather unknown member, at least to us outsiders, but he was a well-respected member and was honored by a lot of No Limit members, including Faro. Who was actually behind the murder is unknown, but I have heard rumors that KTS Pocket Town were the ones behind in an act of retaliation for KTS Vaughn. Both Solo and G Mills were originally from Muskegon Boys, just as many other NLMB members such as Kobe, Diesel, G Faro, Lil Ro, Twino, Scuda and Lil Loss. Mills was very close with G Johnny from Muskegon Boys. J-Dog from No Limit is currently locked up for murder and attempted murder of 18-year-old Alexander Townsend, also known as Malo from MMGM60, who was shot and killed in September 2016. Malo, along with a 16-year-old boy, was shot by J-Dog in a drive-by attack in the 2600 block of East 75th Street, which is Black Mob territory. The 16-year-old, who fortunately survived the shooting, was arrested on an unrelated charge a month later, and 3 days later, while at the juvenile detention center, he saw J-Dog twice. In both instances, J-Dog placed his 2 fingers against his temple, mimicking a gun. The first time, J-Dog used his other hand to cover his mouth. This pose is often used by No Limit members as a mockery after the death of Pt1, who made the pose famous and was killed by Mally, Mad Max and Choppa from No Limit. In February 2017, 30 Clips, who is currently locked up for unlawful use of the weapon, dropped a song together with No Limit Diesel called Don't Get Exposed. In the song, 30 Clips, who I believe is the brother of J-Dog, rapped, "Why you think we the smokers? Because we took the name from the smoker." For those of you who don't know, Pt1 used to call himself the Smoker. Shortly after the murder of Pt1, Mad Max even wrote, "The Smoker," in his Instagram bio. Also, in the same seconds 30 Clips rapped this line, Choppa was front center in the music video. Anyway, back to J-Dog. J-Dog, who was only 17 years old at the time of the murder, was charged as an adult but was only charged with conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated battery. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison and will be released in 2025. Of these losses, it was probably the death of Lil Gage that had the most impact of them all. He was close with both the older generation and the younger generation coming up who today are DrenchGang. What is sad is that Lil Gage was killed only 3 days before his 16th birthday. After his death, the younger generation formed Gage Way or Gunplay to honor his name, which they still claim. Faro, Varu, Zyski, Twan, Twino, Muwap, Kitty and Lil Spence were all close with Gage and claimed Gage Way heavy. They all did dirt with him, maybe not killing people but certainly robbing and hitting licks. To my knowledge, Lil Gage was not a murderer, but he did shoot at people. Lil Gage was also close with members from Evans Mob who have had heavy conflicts with KTS. Just to make a thing clear for you people who aren't familiar with No Limit or the Chicago scene, No Limit have lost members before 2016 who Faro honor like Boosie and Capo. However, since Faro was only 11 years old at the time, not even a teenager, I have chosen not to bring up anything earlier than 2016. If you want to learn more about the earlier years, watch the first and second part of the story of No Limit Mad Max. Now we have come to the year 2017. Faro became a teenager on the 11th of January. Quite quickly into the year, No Limit lost one of its older leaders, Big Wet, who was shot on March 29th and tragically died the next day. As I previously said earlier in the story, Big Wet was allegedly killed by shooter shells and shrapnel from Black Mob. Without going into too much detail, since everyone already knows the story, this was the murder that sparked the quadruple homicide on March 30th, which would lead to the arrest of Big Wet's son, Wet M Up, who police thought was responsible for the massacre. However, many people, including myself, don't believe Wet M Up actually was responsible for the murders. What you must remember is that this was a high-profile case. A lot of resources were spent on the investigation, including press conferences and media coverage. I don't think it's possible that the police would release Lil Wet if he did in fact was responsible for the murders. Despite witnesses identifying Lil Wet as the sole shooter and despite having a motive, all charges were dropped and Wet was released, which means he must have had a very strong alibi, which the police certainly investigated closely. Lil Don from Pocket Town even rapped about Lil Wet bragging about catching 4 bodies despite him not being responsible. In addition, much suggests that the 4 victims in the massacre had nothing to do with the murder of Big Wet, so it makes no sense why Lil Wet would crash out like that. Other members rumored to be involved in these murders are Mad Max and Reese Money from NLMB, but that's pure speculation. However, this whole reasoning could be wrong. Wet M Up could still be the one responsible, but I see the probability of it as low. Big Wet is still mocked to this day. One of the alleged killers, Trap Mo from Black Mob, recently mocked his death in an Instagram story where he wrote, "I hear they drenching people, treat that dude like his daddy."
Hours remorse right here with No Limit, Wet 'em Up. Yeah. The name speaks for itself. Drench.
Quadruple kid, man.
Huh? Yeah. Drip gang? DrenchGang.
DrenchGang.
Oh, yeah, I know what that means. Yeah. Your niggas drenched, yeah.
I gotta go to the video.
Yeah, your niggas get drenched with no rain, yeah.
4 months after the murder of Big Wet, one of his alleged killers would be shot dead in one of the most brutal ways possible. Shooter Shells was about to get into his car in the Auburn Gresham community when 3 men exited a white Nissan Altima and opened fire on that July morning. One of them was Mad Max from NLMB, which was confirmed in police reports. Max and the 2 other shooters ran up to Shooter Shells and shot him repeatedly in his body and head. As he fell to the ground, it is rumored they took turns shooting him in the head. Shooter Shells was approximately shot between 15 and 18 times in the head. It was horrifying. Half of his head was entirely shot off. The 3 men then jumped back into the car and sped away from the scene. Police recovered 43 shell casings near his body. In the autopsy report, performed by Dr. Akers, it was said the amount of gunshot wounds Shell suffered from were too many to document. The murder is still being investigated by the FBI, who has been commissioned to investigate the year-long back-and-forth violence between Black Mob and No Limit. However, no arrests have been made. The only suspect named in the report was Mad Max, who was killed in 2018, allegedly by Hell Rel from Lakeside, who was arrested for the murder, then released, but then arrested yet again and convicted of manslaughter. Hell Rel will be released in February 2025. It's been speculated that at least one of the 2 other offenders in the murder of Shooter Shells were from ABK. Much of this speculation is based on the fact that Shooter Shells murdered Yogi and that ABK therefore wanted revenge. The theory is also based on the fact that Black Mob and Shawty Hit in specific started terrorizing ABK after the murder. Later in July 2017, G Slim from No Limit was murdered by Kill a Spook from Pocket Town, as I told you about earlier, so no need to explain it again. Later, in September and October, Lakeside would lose 2 members, Lil Savage and J Will. Lil Savage was only 14 years old when he was shot and killed while standing on a sidewalk in the 8000 block of South Manistee, which was just a few blocks from where he lived. Who was actually behind the murder is unknown. I haven't really seen anyone mock him, not from No Limit, not from nobody. In October, 24-year-old J Will from Lakeside was killed in West City territory. He was shot in the head afterwards, and an unknown gunman ran up to him and started firing shots. It's not a reach to think that it could have been either Evans Mob or Drill City that was behind the murder, since they beef with Lakeside and KTS, however that's just me speculating. These murders do not play any particular role in this story. The reason I tell you about these murders is more for you to understand the history, relations and conflicts between sets and members that have been dropped throughout time. In November 2017, Lakeside lost a 3rd member, DY, who crashed in a stolen vehicle after a high-speed chase with police. Now we have come to the year 2018. Faro was now 14 years of age and started becoming more involved in the street. 2018 was a year of many losses for both No Limit but also for Faro personally. Only 9 days after Faro's 14th birthday, he lost his older cousin Ace from No Limit. Ace, whose real name was DeMarcus Ely, was standing outside a liquor store in the 2900 block of East 79th Street. A notorious block in Terror Town where a lot of violence with deadly outcome have occurred. Suddenly, a man wearing a camouflage jacket over a black hoodie exited the store and shot Ace point blank in the head. The shooter then ran away heading north on Escanaba, which is towards the territory of Death Row but could also be the way towards Lakeside. Who was behind the murder is unfortunately unknown, but my guess, based on what I have heard and who No Limit was beefing with at the time, I believe it was Lakeside, KTS or Pocket Town. No Limit's conflict with Death Row hadn't really taken off at this point, however, who from Pocket Town, Lakeside or KTS that was behind the murder is unknown. Who was behind the murder is less interesting though. What is interesting is how it affected Faro. On January 30th, the funeral was held for Ace. Faro made several posts on Facebook where he expressed his feelings about his cousin's death. I'm tired of funerals, people won't understand how it feels until we make them. Rest up Ace. A relative in the comments asked Faro if he was okay, to which he replied, I don't know about this one. Things will never be the same. A while later, Faro made another post where he wrote, not finna keep seeing my family tear up about deaths. We are not the only family that's going to feel it. This was the first part of the story of No Limit Faro from DrenchGang. Part 2 coming soon. I send my condolences to all the families who have lost loved ones to gang violence in Chicago.